I stood frozen at the threshold of my parents' new mansion in Westlake Hills, Austin, staring at the stern-faced security guard blocking my path. Behind him, through the grand entryway, crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over elegantly dressed guests mingling in the marble foyer. The sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and a live string quartet floated through the warm Texas evening. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're not on the guest list," the guard said, his voice professionally detached. "There must be some mistake," I replied, smoothing down the silk dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion. "I'm Olivia Mitchell. These are my parents' home." He checked his tablet again. "I have a Ryan Mitchell and a Sarah Mitchell listed as family members, but no Olivia." My heart sank. Ryan, my younger brother who hadn't held a steady job since college, and Sarah, my sister who'd spent the last decade finding herself through expensive hobbies funded by our parents, or rather, by me. I'm Olivia Mitchell, 35 years old, partner at one of Austin's top law firms, and I just discovered I wasn't invited to my own parents' housewarming party, a home I had contributed $175,000 toward just 3 months ago when my father called about unexpected construction costs. If you've ever felt the sharp sting of rejection from the very people who should value you most, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. Keep watching to discover how this betrayal led to the most important decision of my life. Through the open doorway, I glimpsed my mother's designer gown and my father's tailored suit, clothes I had funded during their temporary cash flow situation last spring. The sprawling 5,000-square-foot hill country estate gleamed with new furniture, art pieces, and landscaping that I had helped finance through numerous emergency transfers over the past year. "Could I speak with Mrs. Mitchell, please?" I maintained my composure despite the hurricane of emotions threatening to consume me. The guard radioed someone inside. Meanwhile, well-dressed guests streamed past me, offering curious glances as they were warmly welcomed to the celebration. I recognized family friends, colleagues of my parents, cousins, aunts, and uncles, all attending a housewarming for a home I had substantially funded but apparently wasn't welcome to enter. My phone vibrated. A bank notification confirmed the $45,000 transfer I'd made last week, the same amount my mother had tearfully claimed was absolutely essential to cover the final costs before their housewarming party. "Olivia, honey, you know how your father gets about these things," she had said. "We just want everything to be perfect for the housewarming. You understand, don't you, sweetie? You've always been our practical one." Of course I understood. I always did. Since making partner at 29, I had been their first call when financial emergencies arose. My parents' roof repair, Ryan's failed restaurant venture, Sarah's student loans for the third degree she'd never complete. A woman in a black cocktail dress appeared, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Mitchell? I'm the event coordinator. I understand there's some confusion about the guest list." "It's not confusion," I replied, showing her the bank transfer on my phone. "I paid for a significant portion of this home, $175,000 for construction costs, plus $45,000 last week for the finishing touches." She shifted uncomfortably. "I apologize, but our policy is clear. We can only admit guests who are specifically authorized by the hosts." "The hosts are my parents." "Yes, ma'am. But they were very specific about the approved list." Have you ever funded someone else's dream only to be left standing outside, looking in? Sometimes the people we sacrifice the most for are the ones who value us the least. If this resonates with you, don't stop watching now. What happens next might change how you view your own relationships. I needed answers. If I wasn't welcome at this housewarming, I needed to know why, and then I would do something I should have done years ago. I drove to a wine bar across the street with a clear view of my parents' new estate. Ordering a glass of Cabernet, I began reviewing my financial history with my family. I opened my banking app and scrolled through recent transfers. $220,000 for the house in the past year. $30,000 for Ryan's business consultation course in May. $18,000 for my parents' anniversary trip to Europe in February. And that was just in the past 6 months. My phone rang. It was my cousin Zoe, the only family member who had ever shown genuine concern for me. "Liv, where are you? I'm at the party and don't see you anywhere." I'm across the street at Vino Verde. They wouldn't let me in, apparently. I'm not on the guest list. Silence, then. That's impossible. You're their daughter. That's what I thought, too.
Can you look into it?
While Zoe investigated, I continued analyzing my transactions. Over 7 years, I had transferred $418,000 to my family members. Nearly $500,000 for emergencies, investments, celebrations, and temporary financial difficulties. I remembered my father's call 3 months ago. Olivia, honey, these construction companies are killing us with last-minute costs. We don't want to lose our dream home at the final stage. You've always been the dependable one, the only one who truly understands how important family stability is. Dependable, reliable, practical. Words I had mistaken for love, but now sounded like code for exploitable. Zoe called back 20 minutes later, her voice tight with anger. Liv, you won't believe what I just overheard. I was standing near your mother when someone asked about you. She said, and I'm quoting, "We decided to keep the housewarming more exclusive, just for people who really appreciate fine living." Olivia is so wrapped up in her career. She wouldn't enjoy this type of social gathering. My fingers tightened around my wine glass. A social gathering in a home I had helped purchase. It gets worse, Zoe continued. Sarah was telling her friends that you probably wouldn't have shown up anyway because you're always too busy with your boring legal work to have any fun. That was a lie. I had rescheduled important client meetings to attend every family event in the past year, my mother's birthday, Ryan's girlfriend's baby shower, my cousin's wedding. Always present, always paying, always treated like an outsider. And Ryan was bragging to his college buddies about how he convinced you to invest in his business ventures. He called you the family piggy bank, and everyone laughed. Family piggy bank. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. That was exactly what I was to them. Not a daughter, not a sister, but a financial resource to be drained and discarded. Do you recognize this pattern in your own life? The moment of clarity, when you realize you've been valued only for what you provide, not for who you are? Don't walk away from this story now. The revelation coming next could be the wake-up call you need. Through the wine bar window, I watched guests arriving at the mansion in luxury cars. I recognized my Uncle Paul, who had borrowed $12,000 from me for urgent home repairs last year and never mentioned it again. Next to him was my cousin Emma, whom I had helped with graduate school tuition. All these people I had financially supported were celebrating with my family while I sat outside, excluded and humiliated. Zoe, can you find out something for me? Discreetly check how much they claim the house cost and who contributed. While waiting, I created a detailed spreadsheet on my laptop. Every transfer, every loan, every temporary help, date, amount, recipient, stated purpose. The pattern was devastating. I had been systematically exploited, then pushed aside when inconvenient. My mother's voice from last week echoed. Olivia, you're the only one who can help with these final touches. We know you understand what family truly means. Family. They wielded that word like a key to unlock my bank account, but apparently, it didn't grant me access to the home I helped create.
Zoe called back.
According to your mother, they saved for years and made significant sacrifices for this house, with help from various relatives.
Saved.
Sacrifices. Help. More lies to hide that I had funded nearly a quarter of this $900,000 home without even being invited inside. I closed my laptop with a decision crystallizing in my mind. For 7 years, I had allowed them to treat me like a personal ATM. I financed their lives, their dreams, their celebrations, and received only token acknowledgement in return. But now I could see clearly how they viewed me. And if they wanted to treat me like a bank, maybe it was time to start acting like one. Banks have terms, conditions, and consequences when agreements are breached. It was time to conduct a complete audit of my family account and determine if this relationship offered any return on investment. I returned to my downtown Austin condo with its view of Lady Bird Lake, feeling a determination I hadn't experienced in years. My home suddenly felt like a sanctuary from the toxicity I had normalized for too long. I turned on my computer and began what I should have done years ago. a complete financial audit of the Mitchell family. Zoe arrived with a bottle of tequila and a grim expression. "You need to hear what happened after you left." She poured 2 shots and continued. "Your mother walked past me and asked if I'd seen you. When I told her you'd been turned away at the door, she laughed, actually laughed, and said, 'Oh, she'll get over it.' Olivia always understands these things. She's too level-headed for drama." Level-headed for drama. Translation: conditioned to accept any humiliation without complaint.
There's more, Zoe said.
"I overheard Sarah telling her friends that you always try to dominate family gatherings with your success stories. She said they decided to have a more refined celebration without your competitive energy." Competitive energy. Me, who had paid for Sarah's apartment, her student loans, and probably the designer outfit she was wearing to criticize me. I opened my financial software and started extracting detailed reports of every transfer to family members. Zoe, who worked in financial analytics, helped me compile a comprehensive spreadsheet. $418,752 over 7 years. Not counting the interest that money could have earned if properly invested. "My God, Liv," Zoe muttered, staring at the numbers. "With this money, you could have bought your own vacation property or funded that legal clinic for domestic violence victims you've always talked about. Or taken that sabbatical to work with the International Justice Mission," I replied bitterly. "The dream I've put off for 5 years." As we organized the data by category, a sinister pattern emerged. The family emergencies always coincided with major purchases or luxury events. The urgent plumbing repair happened 3 weeks before my parents' Mediterranean cruise. Ryan's business emergency aligned perfectly with the release of his dream car model. "They planned this," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a gavel. "These aren't emergencies, they're calculated extractions." Zoe pointed to a series of transfers from last winter. "Look at this. $22,000 in January for your father's essential medical tests. But here on their credit card statements, they remodeled their previous home's kitchen in February. Medical tests. Kitchen remodel." The deception was breathtaking.
My phone rang.
It was my mother. "Olivia, sweetie, we missed you at the housewarming. I hope you understand it was a more intimate affair. You know how these things are." I put the call on speaker so Zoe could hear.
"Hi, Mom."
"How was the celebration?" "Wonderful. Ryan made such a touching toast about family roots, and everyone commented on how beautiful everything turned out." Touching toast about family roots from my brother, who hadn't contributed a penny to the $900,000 home. "That's great, Mom. I'm sure it was special."
It was.
"By the way, Olivia, your father is concerned about some bills that arrived today. You know how stressed he gets about financial matters. Could we talk tomorrow about a little assistance?" For hours after excluding me from the housewarming I helped fund, she was already asking for more money. The audacity was almost impressive. "Sure, Mom. What kind of bills?" "Oh, you know, the usual. The credit card is rather high this month because of last-minute house expenses, and there are some outstanding payments to contractors." Outstanding payments to contractors. The contractors I had fully paid last week. "No problem, Mom. We'll talk tomorrow." After hanging up, Zoe looked at me in disbelief. "She's got some nerve." "It's not nerve," I replied, a cold clarity taking hold. "It's certainty. They are absolutely certain that I will always pay, always accept, always understand." This is the moment of truth that many of us face in toxic relationships when we finally see the manipulation for what it is. If you're nodding in recognition right now, don't turn away. The plan I'm about to execute might be exactly what you need to reclaim your own power. I opened my laptop again and began investigating my family on social media, something I had never bothered to do before. What I found made me question my own sanity. Sarah's Instagram. Photos of spa weekends, designer shopping sprees, and wine country tours, all posted during periods when she claimed to be struggling with basic expenses. Ryan's Facebook. Check-ins at exclusive restaurants, pictures of new tech gadgets, weekend trips to music festivals, a lifestyle incompatible with someone who couldn't afford rent. My parents' profiles. Photos of their European vacation after their emergency repairs, their country club memberships, which I had subsidized, and dinner parties at upscale restaurants, the night before calling me about financial difficulties. "Zoe, look at this," I said, showing her a photo of my parents at the Reserve Steakhouse from 3 days before they called about the urgent housewarming expenses. The Reserve, where dinners start at $250 per person. The same day my mother had cried about financial stress. The anger that had been building all day crystallized into something more powerful, cold, calculated determination. For years, I had operated under the assumption that we were a family with temporary financial difficulties. But the truth was different. They had active, expensive lifestyles secretly funded by me, while deliberately excluding me from their social world. "I'm going to do something I should have done years ago," I announced to Zoe. "What's that?" "I'm going to treat this like any other bad investment in my portfolio. I'm cutting my losses." Zoe smiled for the first time that evening. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen, then at the social media photos, and finally at the receipt for the $45,000 transfer I had made for a housewarming party I had been barred from attending. A plan formed in my mind, elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. "They want to treat me like a bank, Zoe. And banks have very specific policies about default and breach of contract." I grabbed my phone and started making calls. First to my firm's top financial litigation attorney, then to my accountant, and finally to a private investigator I had worked with on a fraud case last year. If my family wanted to play a game of financial manipulation, they had chosen the wrong opponent. I wasn't just the naive daughter and sister they could exploit indefinitely. I was a partner in a litigation firm who specialized in financial recovery and contract enforcement. The housewarming party might be over, but my case was just beginning. And like any good attorney, I knew that the most powerful weapon wasn't emotion, it was evidence. 3 days later, my family would receive formal legal documents that would change our relationship forever. And for the first time in 7 years, I would be the one dictating the terms. If this story resonates with you, there's a reason. Sometimes the hardest but most necessary thing we can do is stand up for our own worth. Your story might not end the same way as mine, but it should end with you reclaiming your power, your dignity, and your future. Don't let another day pass without examining the balance sheet of your own relationships. Like, share, and subscribe to see what I did next. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I walked into my law firm's conference room at 7 a.m., 3 hours before my usual meetings. The weekend had been a blur of documentation, financial analysis, and strategy sessions with the team I had assembled. Spread across the polished mahogany table were folders containing 7 years of financial records, text messages, emails, and social media screenshots, the complete evidence of my family's systematic exploitation. "Coffee?" asked Patricia, our firm's most ruthless financial litigation specialist and my mentor since law school. "Please," I replied, opening my laptop to review our strategy one final time. Patricia placed a steaming mug beside me. "Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed? Family lawsuits get ugly fast." I pulled up the photo I'd set as my laptop background, the image of my parents toasting with champagne at their housewarming party, the party I had funded but wasn't allowed to attend. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. By noon, the legal documents were finalized. Not a lawsuit, not yet, but something equally powerful, a formal demand letter and financial reconciliation agreement. Patricia had helped craft something both legally binding and psychologically devastating. The letter detailed every transfer I'd made to my family over 7 years, $418,752 plus 6.5% compound interest, the standard rate for unsecured personal loans. The current total, $521,876. The demand wasn't for immediate payment, which would be impossible for them. Instead, it outlined 3 options that would forever change our relationship. "Courier service confirms delivery scheduled for 3 p.m. today," my assistant informed me. "All 4 packages will be delivered simultaneously." My heart raced as I imagined the scene, my parents Ryan and Sarah each receiving thick legal envelopes at exactly the same moment. No chance for them to coordinate their responses or construct a unified manipulation strategy. I spent the afternoon in depositions, deliberately keeping myself busy. At 3:15 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications. First came the text messages. Mom, Olivia, what is this?
Call me immediately. Dad, we need to talk. Now.
Ryan, what the hell are you doing, Liv? Are you insane? Sarah, is this some kind of sick joke? Then the phone calls started, first individually, then in rapid succession, as if they were passing the phone around during what I assumed was an emergency family meeting. I let each call go to voicemail. At 5:30 p.m., I walked into my condo, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of the expensive scotch I reserved for major victories in court. This wasn't a victory yet, but it was the opening statement in the most important case of my life. My phone rang again. It was Zoe.
Holy hell, Liv.
Your mother just called me in hysterics. What exactly did you do? I took a sip of scotch, savoring the warm burn. I sent them a financial reconciliation agreement. Details, counselor. I need details. I documented every dollar I've given them for 7 years, added standard interest, and presented them with 3 options. Which are? I settled onto my balcony, overlooking the Austin skyline. Option 1. They formally acknowledge all transfers were loans, sign retroactive loan agreements, and establish a payment plan. Total, $521,876 over 10 years. They'll never be able to pay that.
Exactly.
Which brings us to option 2. They transfer to me a 30% ownership stake in the new house, with formal recognition that I'm a co-owner with full access and usage rights. Brilliant. And option 3. They can declare that our financial relationship ends permanently. Never ask me for money again. Never expect me to pay for anything. Never count on me to solve their financial problems. Have you ever reached that breaking point where setting boundaries feels like both the hardest and most necessary thing you've ever done? That moment when you realize that the people who should love you the most have been taking advantage of your generosity for years? Don't look away now. What happens next might give you the courage to take that same stand. But there are conditions, I continued. First, if any of them contacts me asking for money in the next 7 years, I automatically file a lawsuit for fraud and unjust enrichment. Second, they must publicly acknowledge to the entire family how much I've contributed. Third, they must deliver a formal written apology for excluding me from the housewarming. And how long do they have to decide? 48 hours. The agreement becomes final at 3 p.m. Wednesday. What happens if they don't respond? Then I proceed with option 4, which they don't know about yet, a formal lawsuit with discovery requests that will expose every financial lie they've told for the past decade. At 9 p.m., my father showed up at my door unannounced, his standard tactic when he wanted to intimidate me into compliance. I watched through the security camera as he paced the hallway, his face flushed with anger. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance. Hello, Dad. What the hell is this, Olivia? He waved the legal documents in my face. Some kind of blackmail? It's a financial reconciliation agreement. The kind banks issue when they discover systematic fraud.
Fraud?
Where your family doesn't exclude me from a house I paid for. His expression shifted from anger to his practiced disappointment, the look that had made me cave so many times before. Your mother is devastated. Is that what you wanted?
No, Dad.
What I wanted was to be treated like a daughter, not some kind of money-printing machine. He tried a different approach. We've always been there for you. We raised you, educated you, and I've repaid that investment many times over. $418,752 to be exact. We never asked for that much. Actually, you did. One emergency at a time. He stared at me, suddenly seeing something different, not his compliant daughter, but a formidable opponent who knew exactly what she was doing. You have 48 hours to decide, I said calmly. I suggest you consult a lawyer. We can't afford a lawyer. Interesting. You could afford a $900,000 house. I closed the door, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. Tuesday brought a coordinated assault. First came the guilt trips via text, childhood photos from my mother, reminders of times they'd helped me, accusations that I was destroying the family. Then the flying monkeys, calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins who'd been fed a distorted version of events. Olivia, how could you do this to your parents after all they've sacrificed for you? My Aunt Beth's voicemail dripped with judgment. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I worked with my private investigator to compile a second dossier, evidence of my family's lavish lifestyle that directly contradicted their claims of financial hardship. Photos of Sarah's 3 vacations this year while claiming she couldn't afford rent. Screenshots of Ryan's Rolex purchase the week after I invested in his business. Records of my parents' country club membership, renewed 2 days after they called about critical house payment issues. By Tuesday evening, the tone of the messages changed. Anger gave way to panic as they realized I wasn't backing down. Mom. Olivia, please. We need to talk about this like a family. Dad. Your mother can't sleep. Is that what you wanted? Ryan. Sis, I know I messed up, but this is extreme. Sarah. We can work this out without lawyers. Please. On Wednesday morning, I received a text from my father. We're coming to your office at 2 p.m. All of us. We need to talk before this deadline. I forwarded the message to Patricia. They're coming here. Be ready. Conference room B is prepared, she replied. I'll be in the adjacent room if you need me. At 1:55 p.m., my assistant escorted my family into the conference room. They looked like they hadn't slept. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. My father's shirt was wrinkled. Ryan kept cracking his knuckles, and Sarah couldn't stop fidgeting with her hair. I entered precisely at 2 p.m., wearing my most formidable courtroom suit, carrying a leather portfolio containing additional documentation. No hugs, no greetings, just a professional nod as I took my seat at the head of the table. Thank you for coming. You have 1 hour until the deadline. Have you reached a decision? My mother began crying immediately, her go-to tactic. Olivia, how can you do this to us? We're your family. That's precisely why I'm doing this. Families shouldn't treat each other as financial resources. My father tried to take control. We've discussed your proposal and frankly, it's ridiculous. We can't possibly pay $500,000 and we're not giving you our house. It's not giving. It's recognizing my existing investment. Ryan leaned forward. Look, sis, we get it. You're hurt about the party, but this is extreme. I opened my portfolio and placed 4 new folders on the table. These contain evidence I didn't include in the original agreement. Bank statements showing substantial deposits immediately after my emergency transfers. Social media posts documenting luxury purchases within days of claiming financial hardship. Text messages between all of you discussing how to extract more money from me. The color drained from their faces. How did you get our text messages? Sarah whispered. I didn't. But your reaction just confirmed they exist. Sometimes the turning point in a toxic relationship isn't when they hurt you, it's when you finally stop allowing it. If you're watching this and recognizing your own family dynamics, pay attention to what happens next. Your financial and emotional freedom might depend on it. I continued. I've consulted with 3 different financial fraud specialists. All confirm I have a strong case for systematic deception and unjust enrichment. If we go to court, it becomes public record. Every detail of how you manipulated me for 7 years will be available to everyone, your friends, colleagues, neighbors. My father's face hardened. You wouldn't dare. I've drafted the complaint. I placed another document on the table. It's ready to file at 3:01 p.m. if we don't reach an agreement. My mother's sobs grew louder. We never meant to hurt you, yet you excluded me from the housewarming for a house I helped pay for. It was a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. I have the guest list with every family member's name except mine. The room fell silent except for my mother sniffling. My father stared at the complaint draft. Ryan examined his hands, and Sarah kept wiping away tears. Finally, my father spoke. Option 3. We'll take option 3. Are you certain? It means our financial relationship ends permanently. Yes. He could barely meet my eyes. but you can't sue us. As long as you comply with all conditions, I won't. I slid the final agreement across the table. They each signed it, their signatures shaky but legible. One last thing, I said, retrieving a small device from my portfolio. This records our verbal confirmation. Please state your full name and that you acknowledge receiving $418,752 from me over 7 years, that you understand our financial relationship is terminated, and that you agree to all conditions in the signed document. One by one, they complied, their voices barely audible. At exactly 2:58 p.m., I collected all signed documents and the recording device. This concludes our business meeting. The agreement is now in effect. As they stood to leave, my mother made one last attempt. Olivia, sweetie, will we see you at Thanksgiving? I looked at her for a long moment. That depends on whether you want a daughter or an ATM. For the first time in 7 years, you'll have to decide which matters more. After they left, Patricia entered the conference room. That was impressive. Are you okay? I nodded, unexpected tears threatening to spill. I will be. The aftermath was both exactly what I expected and completely surprising. The extended family divided into factions, those who believed my parents' version, and those who had experienced similar treatment and recognized the pattern.
My cousin Emma called the next day.
I got a weird call from your mom asking for a loan. When I mentioned I'd helped with their kitchen remodel last year, she hung up. They're looking for new funding sources, I explained. Well, I wanted you to know I've started tracking my own family loans. It's over $30,000 in 3 years. Be careful, Emma. Document everything. The following week brought news through the family grapevine. My parents had listed their new house for sale, claiming they wanted something cozier. Ryan had suddenly found full-time employment at an accounting firm. Sarah had moved in with roommates to embrace a more communal lifestyle. Without my financial support, they were forced to live within their actual means, which were still comfortable, just not extravagant. 3 months later, I hosted my own housewarming party at my newly purchased lakefront property, an investment I could finally make with the money I was no longer giving away. I invited every family member except my parents, Ryan, and Sarah. Aren't you being just like them? Zoe asked as we prepared for the party. No, I replied, arranging flowers in the entryway. I'm not excluding them while taking their money. I'm establishing a boundary after they violated my trust. The party was everything I'd hoped for, genuine connections with people who valued me for myself, not my wallet. As guests mingled on the deck overlooking Lake Travis, I realized something profound. For the first time since making partner, I felt truly wealthy. Not because I had more money, but because I was no longer hemorrhaging it to people who saw me as nothing but a resource. 6 months after our conference room showdown, I received a letter from my mother. Inside was a check for $15,000 and a note. A start on what we owe you. Your father doesn't know I'm sending this. I returned the check with a brief note. This isn't about the money. It's about respect. A year later, Ryan approached me at a cousin's wedding, our first encounter since the agreement. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said awkwardly. I was awful to you. For years. Yes, you were. I'm sorry, Liv. Not because I need anything, but because I miss my sister. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation. What prompted this realization? Therapy, actually. Turns out when you can't throw money at your problems, you have to face them.
His honesty surprised me.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Can we maybe get coffee sometime? My treat, obviously. I found myself nodding. I'd like that. Sarah took longer, 18 months before she left a voicemail that wasn't offensive or accusatory. Hey, Liv. I just wanted to say I understand why you did what you did. I wouldn't have been friends with the person I was back then either. My parents were the last holdouts. 2 years after our agreement, they sold their downsized house and moved to a retirement community in San Antonio. My father never contacted me directly, but my mother occasionally sent cards on my birthday and Christmas, simple notes without requests or guilt trips. 3 years after the housewarming party I wasn't invited to, I received an unexpected invitation in the mail. My parents were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary with a modest gathering at their retirement community clubhouse. The invitation included a handwritten note. "We understand if you don't want to come. We just wanted you to know you're welcome." I stood in my kitchen, turning the invitation over in my hands, considering what it meant. Not an apology, not exactly, but perhaps an acknowledgement. A small step. I decided to attend, not with my checkbook, but with clear eyes and firm boundaries. I would go as their daughter, not their bank. And for the first time in a decade, that might be enough. The most valuable lesson I learned through this ordeal was that true family connections cannot be bought or sold. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not utility. And sometimes the greatest act of love, both for yourself and for those who exploit you, is to stop enabling destructive patterns. Today, when anyone asks me for financial help, I have straightforward conversations about expectations and boundaries. Not because I've become cold, but because I've learned that honest relationships thrive on transparency, not manipulation. My bank account may be healthier, but the real wealth is in finally understanding my own worth, a value that has nothing to do with what I can provide and everything to do with who I am. If this story resonates with your own experience, remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships to flourish. The people who truly love you will respect your limits, and those who don't weren't really loving you in the first place. The hardest check to write is the one that says no more, but it's also the one that finally pays dividends of self-respect. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories.